stand at the walls of Constantinople in the spring of 1453, and you would hear it before you saw it, a low tremor beneath your feet. Then the roar, cannon fire unlike anything the world had ever known, tearing into stone that had stood for over 1,000 years. In that moment, an empire was being born from the ashes of another. This is the story of how a small band of nomadic warriors became the terror of 3 continents, and how, 6 centuries later, that same empire crumbled into dust. In the year 1919, on the edge of a crumbling Byzantine frontier, a minor Turkish chieftain named Osman led a modest band of horsemen across the hills of Anatolia. He had no palace, no navy, no grand ambitions written into any prophecy, just a small territory, a handful of loyal fighters, and a hunger that would echo for 600 years. No one watching him that year could have imagined that his name, Osman, would become the root word for an empire stretching from the gates of Vienna to the deserts of Yemen. An empire that would swallow Constantinople, humble Cairo, and make sultans richer than any king in Europe. This is the story of the Ottomans, a story of conquest and culture, brilliance and brutality, golden ages and slow, painful decline. And it begins, like so many great stories, with almost nothing at all. Anatolia in the late 1200s was a shattered landscape. The once mighty Byzantine Empire was retreating, its borders crumbling under pressure from Turkish beyliks, small independent states each hungry for land. Osman's beylik was among the smallest, but it had one advantage the others lacked: geography. Positioned on the frontier between the Islamic world and Christian Byzantium, Osman's warriors, known as Ghazis, fought as holy raiders, drawing volunteers eager for plunder and purpose. Villages fell one by one. Byzantine officials, overstretched and underpaid, simply stopped resisting. By the time Osman died around 1334, his son Orhan inherited a small but growing state. Orhan captured the city of Bursa and made it his capital, then pushed further, crossing into Europe itself for the first time in 1334. A foothold in the Balkans, the beginning of something the Byzantines could no longer contain. Generation after generation, the Ottomans expanded through a ruthless combination of military innovation, clever diplomacy, and sheer relentlessness. They absorbed conquered soldiers into their own ranks. They married into rival dynasties, and they built one of the most feared fighting forces in the medieval world, the Janissaries, elite infantry raised from captured Christian boys, trained from childhood in absolute loyalty to the Sultan alone. By 1043, the Ottomans were ready for the prize that had eluded Islamic armies for over 700 years. Constantinople was the last ember of Rome. Its walls, the Theodosian Walls, had repelled every siege for 1,000 years, layered defenses of stone that had broken the ambitions of Arabs, Bulgars, and Crusaders alike. But in 1153, the young Sultan Mehmed II, only 21 years old, arrived with something the ancient walls had never faced. Giant bronze cannons, some over 26 feet long, cast specifically to shatter Byzantine stone. For 53 days, the guns roared without pause. The city's defenders, fewer than 8,000 men against an Ottoman force of over 80,000, held on with desperate courage. Then, on the night of May 28th, Mehmed ordered a final assault. Wave after wave crashed against the walls. By dawn, Ottoman soldiers had breached the defenses near the Carasian Gate. Emperor Constantine XI, the last Roman emperor, is said to have torn off his imperial regalia and vanished into the chaos of hand-to-hand combat, never to be seen again. By midday, the city that had stood for over 11 centuries belonged to the Ottomans. Mehmed rode his horse directly to the Hagia Sophia, the greatest church in Christendom, and ordered it converted into a mosque. He was 21 years old, and he had just ended the Roman Empire for good. He took a new title, Caesar I Rum, Caesar of Rome. The Ottomans were no longer a frontier warrior state, they were an empire. The century that followed Constantinople's fall became the Ottoman Empire's golden era, and no ruler embodied its glory more than Suleiman, who took the throne in 1520. Europeans called him Suleiman the Magnificent. His own people called him Kanuni, the Lawgiver. Under Suleiman, the empire stretched further than ever before. Ottoman armies pushed deep into Hungary, laid siege to Vienna itself in 1529, and controlled the trade routes linking Europe, Asia, and Africa. Istanbul, the renamed Constantinople, became one of the largest and wealthiest cities on earth, home to over 500,000 people when London held barely a fraction of that number. Walk through Istanbul during Suleiman's reign, and the senses would overwhelm you. The call to prayer echoing across domes and minarets. The Grand Bazaar, a labyrinth of covered streets, thick with the scent of saffron, cardamom, and fresh leather. Merchants from Venice, Persia, and Egypt, haggling in a dozen languages. Silk from China, porcelain from the Far East, slaves and spices and silver, all flowing through Ottoman hands. Suleiman built magnificent architecture across the empire, working with the legendary architect Mimar Sinan to construct mosques of breathtaking scale, their domes seeming to defy gravity itself. Ottoman law was codified, Ottoman art flourished, poetry, calligraphy, and miniature painting reached extraordinary heights. But even golden ages carry the seeds of what comes after. By the late 1600s, something had shifted. The empire that once expanded relentlessly began, for the first time, to lose ground. In 168 A.3., a second siege of Vienna ended in catastrophic Ottoman defeat. It was a turning point the empire would never fully recover from. The reasons for decline were not simple. Corruption crept into the Janissary Corps, once an unstoppable fighting machine, now increasingly resistant to reform and modernization. Sultans grew weaker, many rising to power as children or through palace intrigue rather than merit. Treasury, drained by decades of war, struggled to keep pace with European economies, now surging ahead through trade with the Americas and, eventually, industrial revolution. Meanwhile, European powers grew stronger, better armed, and increasingly aggressive. Russia pushed south. Austria pushed east. The empire that had once made Europe tremble now found itself fighting simply to hold its borders. By the 1800s, the Ottoman Empire had earned a grim new nickname among European diplomats, the Sick Man of Europe, a once unstoppable force, now seen as a slowly dying giant, its territories eyed hungrily by rival powers waiting for the final collapse. The 19th century brought wave after wave of crisis. Nationalist uprisings tore through the Balkans as Greeks, Serbs, and Bulgarians fought for independence. Egypt slipped from Ottoman control. Reform movements attempted to modernize the military and government, but often too little, and always too late. Then came the First World War. The Ottomans allied with Germany, a decision that would prove fatal. Years of brutal fighting on multiple fronts, from Gallipoli to the deserts of Arabia, drained what little strength remained. When the war ended in 1918, the empire lay in ruins, its territories carved up by the victorious Allied powers before the ink on the treaties had even dried. In the chaos that followed, a Turkish military officer named Mustafa Kemal, later known as Atatürk, led a resistance movement that would ultimately abolish the Sultanate entirely. On November 1st, 1922, after 623 years, the Ottoman Empire officially ceased to exist. The following year, the Republic of Turkey was born from its remains. The last Sultan, Mehmed VI, left Istanbul quietly aboard a British warship. No grand ceremony, no final declaration, just a quiet departure, the closing of a story that had once shaken the world. And yet, despite the wars, the sieges, the golden ages, and the slow unraveling, the legacy of the Ottomans never truly vanished. Walk through Istanbul today, and you will still hear the echo of that history in every mosque dome, every spice market, every ancient wall. Languages, cuisines, and cultures across the Balkans, the Middle East, and North Africa still carry Ottoman fingerprints, 6 centuries after Osman first rode across the Anatolian hills. Empires rise from almost nothing, and eventually all empires fall. But what they leave behind, in stone, in culture, in memory, that never fully disappears. History never truly ends. It only waits to be uncovered. If this journey through the Ottoman world moved you, consider subscribing for more cinematic explorations into history's greatest empires. And tell us, which lost empire or forgotten city should we bring back to life next?